Alvarado from Elite Animation Academy. Gladys and Todd and my wife Valeska, and over here is Robbie. He's one of our instructors also, teaches Maya and some of the other classes in our school. I started out being passionate about drawing when I was 4 years old. Part of it came from my dad because he was an engineer and architect, very creative, so he would teach my brother and I, he would give us lessons on painting and drawing and things like that, but a little bit more sophisticated than just finger painting, things like that, so that's just the way he was. I was also influenced by lots of things from the Muppets to Sesame Street to Saturday morning cartoons, Walt Disney of course, Star Wars when it came out back in the 70s, not the new stuff. And all that stuff really influenced me, so I knew pretty early on that I liked that kind of stuff. And on top of that, I suffered from asthma, so I would get sick a lot. I had lots of food allergies, and my uncle used to make fun of me saying that I was so skinny when I was a little kid. I would running, I'd fall down because I was so skinny. So I kind of stayed indoors a lot and drew a lot, so that's kind of why I focused on that, I guess, as a career. Because at 4 years of age, I was already saying that I wanted to work for Disney. So went to school at Ringling College of Art and Design, which is in Sarasota. It's about 2 hours from here. Before then, I had a great teacher in high school that saw the talent that I had, and she knew that I wanted to work for Disney. I didn't know how to do it. It was either that or the military for me. Actually, I was thinking that was going to be my sort of second choice if I didn't know what else I wanted to do. But thankfully, she took me under her wing and helped me put my portfolio together, and I got into Ringling, and Disney would recruit from there. So they recruited me my last year when I graduated, and I went to Disney here in Orlando when it used to be called MGM Studios, and had an internship for 3 months, learned about animation, because when I went to school, I learned illustration, which was basically just drawing. I did figure drawing, we would do sort of children's books, illustrations, and things like that, so I learned how to paint and draw just about every medium that there was. We really didn't have access to computers back then yet. I just wanted to draw. And so all of those skills that I learned at Ringling helped me when I got to Disney. So for 3 months they taught me about animation, which is a lot of the same stuff that I teach in the school, sort of the fundamentals and basics to really get you interested. I mean, we have tons of other classes, from the anime classes we're offering now, Maya, computer classes, Flash, and things like that. But we're really always focusing on the fundamentals and sort of grow into all those different things, because we want to give you guys, or any students that come to our school, the real hardcore fundamentals that are going to help them when they get older and they go to a school. Because that's another thing I do. I teach online, I teach adults, and I'm always surprised at a lot of them, how they're lacking in their drawing skills and things like that, and they have a hard time. So I wanted to open up a school with my wife and Gladys and Todd that would really teach kids these fundamental skills at an early age, so by the time they get into college, they're kind of be ahead of everybody else. So I worked at Disney for 12 years until they closed it down, and I worked on films like Lion King, Pocahontas, Hunchback, Mulan, Lilo and Stitch, Atlantis, help me with some of the other movies. Brother Bear. I kind of forget after a while, I'm getting old, so. Mulan. So I got to work on about 8 or 10 different films when I was there, and did a variety of stuff, from cleanup to animation to some character design and to story and things like that. After Disney shut down, I opened my own animation company with 3 other friends, and we worked on Curious George, the Universal movie, and a bunch of TV films, and something that I'm going to show you guys here as well, because we were trying to work with Nickelodeon, Cartoon Network, and get our own cartoon show out. So we did a lot of stuff there, and then eventually from that I moved on to teaching and doing freelance, and that's what I've been doing, and then we opened the school. So I've had a chance to do a lot of different things and meet a lot of interesting people and fun people and have fun along the way. So I have 3 children myself. My oldest is 17, my youngest is 7, and it's another thing I like doing is playing with my kids and hanging out with them and things. And so I like to see what they watch, because they watch Adventure Time and they watch the regular show and all these other things, and YouTube channels with stuff with all kinds of crazy characters. So it's kind of cool that I can connect with them and see what everybody's doing today, because it's really inspiring and funny to me. So, but one of the first things that I'll show you is a small sample of my work. So this would be my animation reel, and it's something that basically you would put together if you were to go get a job somewhere. And it's just some clips from, basically most of it is from Lilo and Stitch, because it's one of my favorite movies that I worked on. And once I show it to you, I'll kind of go back and talk about some things.
If I were creating a world, I wouldn't mess about with butterflies and daffodils. I would have started with lasers. 8 o'clock, day one. Sorry.
So this is just a small sampling of the stuff that I worked on, and one of the first things was this little animation test. I know the quality is not the best, but I think you could probably tell that that's Hades from the Hercules movie. So basically why I did that was we would always do animation tests just to sort of test our muscles out, flex our muscles, and you could pick any dialogue, and I love movies. There's lots of movies that make me laugh, little pieces of dialogue from movies that make me laugh. And this was probably a movie that most of you are probably not familiar with because it came out when I was, I think, 13 years old. It's called Time Bandits, and it's by Terry Gilliam, who's one of the guys from the Monty Python group, which is a British comedian group that came out in the late 60s and 70s. And so there's a character in it that God created. It's basically evil. And he talks about that if he was able to create the world, he wouldn't have messed around with just making butterflies and daisies, that he would have started with lasers right away, because he's all about technology. And I always liked that piece of dialogue. I thought it was very funny, and I thought one of the characters that would be cool to do it with is Hades, and he pulls out this giant laser. So that's what that's all about. It's a little test. The rest of the stuff, of course, is from Lilo and Stitch, and you see it here in rough form. So basically that's how the animators work on paper, drawing out the character with a pencil, so that we can keep on testing it this way. And then eventually it gets taken to the cleanup department that puts another piece of paper on top, and they clean up the drawings. So then those drawings, in the old days, actually they used to hand paint them and hand ink them. But today they take the cleaned up drawings, scan them into the computer, and then they're able to color them on the computer and composite them that way. So that's why I put in the scenes where you can see not only the rough animation, and here we're going like a frame at a time so you can see it, which is kind of cool to do. But then you can see the same scene that it's been cleaned up now. It's got the other characters, and sometimes working on the film, when I was on Lilo and Stitch, I mainly worked on Stitch. That was the main character when I was in the unit, where we had one top guy and we all worked underneath him. And the reason you do that is so that you have consistency in what the character looks like. And so I worked on the Stitch unit, but at times there would be other characters. But in this particular scene, with the two other characters, Lilo was done by a different animator and her sister was done by a completely different animator. At times they would ask you to do all the characters if the scene was short enough, but for this one I just worked on Stitch. So same thing with this. There's this scene where I just did the hula girls, but when you see the bigger scene has been cleaned up, someone else did the bigger hula girls in the back. I just did the little guys in the front. And same thing for the wider shot. It's like all the little guys are mine, but the big ones aren't. And this guy in the front is done by somebody else. And I think these characters in the back here even move too. So at times you may be asked to do all of them, but at other times you got to think about how many drawings that is, and that's quite a bit for one person to do, so they break it up into different scenes. And on top of that, you can see I didn't even do Stitch in this scene. It was just a little girl, so sometimes they ask you to do something else as well. But mainly I worked on Stitch, but it varies throughout the production on what you're going to be doing. So you can go through this. Now the next thing I'm going to show you guys is a little animated film that was done by a studio to sort of explain the process of animation, how it begins from the early stages until the end. So it's kind of a cool little film because the process of animation does have lots of different stages, and it can get kind of complicated to sort of follow it. So it's a really brief introduction. It's done in a funny way because it's animated with some funny characters, so I just wanted to show you guys that.
Once there was a company that created a fantastic new product. The new product was admired by everyone, and it was decided an advertisement should be created to show the world its benefits. The team agreed that the advertisement should be animated. They elected you to get the job done. You were instantly faced with a number of perplexing questions. What style should I use? Who can I call? What's the process? How much does it cost? And isn't animation just for kids? Well, sit back, relax, and let us answer all those questions as we tell you the story of animation. Animation has been used to help visualize ideas and demonstrate new products for over 100 years, with great success. Over time, many different techniques and styles have evolved. Fascinating, isn't it? But you've still got questions, right? Let's talk a little bit about the process of making an animated film. The first thing you'll need to do is find an agency or animation studio that can help with the project. Where you can begin discussing the details. They'll give you ideas for the different animation styles and the costs associated with each. Once you've selected your style, the producer will create a bid and a production schedule, so you'll know how much the animation will cost and when it will be ready. Now a writer will produce a script. A concept artist will use the script to help visualize the ideas. A voice actor is hired to record the dialogue. At the same time, storyboard artists are hard at work creating detailed drawings for each scene. The storyboards are combined with the dialogue to create an animatic, a film-like representation of the idea. Now the actual animation begins. Animation uses a variety of processes, depending on which style you've chosen. It is composited together along with sound and music into the final image. Now that you know the story of animation, you're probably feeling much better. So get on the phone and call your local animation studio today. What are you waiting for?
Okay, so hopefully that gives you an idea of the animation process. It can be quite complicated, but it's actually a lot of fun when you get into it. And we're going to go into now talking about, like I said, when I had my animation company, we did a lot of different things, and one of them was this project called Farm Force, which another artist brought the idea to us through a producer, but they thought that we could do something with it, because what they wanted to do was produce a small animated short that they were going to use as a presentation piece, and we were going to go around to all these different, Nickelodeon, Cartoon Network, whoever, Disney, whoever would like to see the presentation and see if they would like to make it as a show. So what we ended up doing was about a 4.5 to 5 minute short about the characters. But again, you can kind of go through this and see some of the things that I have that show the process, just like we were talking about. Well, we started out with the script, of course, building up the story that we wanted to do. We did the storyboards that you see in the background there, and that's myself and two of my friends that we worked with, and we did some of the scratch dialogue when we first started putting the film together on video so that we could see if it was working. Later on, we hired some better actors, voice actors, to do the different voices of the characters, so it sounded a little better than what we were doing, but we were just filling in so that we can figure out how long each scene was going to have to be so we can know how long the animation was going to be. Throughout the process, there's lots of different steps. It's a lot of fun, even though he doesn't look like he's too happy there. And this little first piece here are some of the storyboards put together with dialogue, which actually one of the voice actors that we had already recorded. So you can get an idea of what it looks like and how long it's going to run. And you see there's really no animation in this. There's no music, no big sound effects. It's just the actor's voice. So it's a little hard to watch at times, but this is what helps us start working through the process. And this is the scene where actually the evil character throughout the show is Mujo the cow, who's kind of mad, and he's always fighting against these three heroes that are farm force, a fish, a pig, and a chicken. And he's always escaped. The episodes, if it's going to do with him, most of the time what was going to happen is he escapes from the prison and he goes off and does something. So this is how we started it.
This will make the perfect lay and no one knows I'm here! Filthy shame! Now all I need is an army! But how?
So just a really rough way of seeing what's going on, how long it runs. We start designing characters and what they look like. This is Big, the pig, so that everybody knows how to draw him. Here's Fish Sticks, the fish. He's a karate fish. Was supposed to speak like Mr. Miyagi from Karate Kid. And there's Mujo, the mad cow. He was the bad guy, but we had lots of different bad guys, but he was the main bad guy. And there's layouts or background designs, prop designs, because you guys have to think about when you're working on animated film, whether it's a short or something really big, it's not like live action where you can shoot everything. You have someone that usually gets props, or they make the props, or they bring in things, or they find a location. But we have to create all those things, so we have to have designers designing things, people designing the characters, animators animating the scene, people who would then paint the backgrounds, and things like that. So there's a lot of people who are involved in making a film like this, whether it's 2D or 3D. So even little wrenches and clocks and toilets and all that stuff has to be thought of. What the farm looks like. What the farm looks like is going to be colored. So you start doing all kinds of experiments of what this world looks like. Here you can see too that Big has a whole bodysuit, which is what he was dressed as for first, but we got rid of it and we gave him a little cape and things like that. So things are always evolving and changing at this stage. And here's a layout artist who does all the sort of background designs and camera moves and things like that. So this drawing is actually it's the layout design, and you can see the poses of the characters where they're going to break through the window and land down here. So that indicates to the animator what the action is going to be in the scene. And meanwhile, too, you have the layout so you know where the characters are supposed to be placed and things like that. So all these things have to be drawn, designed, developed by all the different artists. There's some cleanup artists working on the film. And then this next one is going to be the same piece that we saw, starting from a different point, but you can see it's about to go through the gate. But there's going to be some effects. There's actually some flies flying there, and kind of what the light looks like, and it's going to be animated. There's going to be some sound effects. on top of the voice actor stuff. So this is like sort of the next stage once we start putting things in.
This will make the perfect lay and no one knows I'm here! Filthy shame! Now all I need is an army, but how?
So there's the background that I was just showing you, is completely colored. And at this stage, we're getting closer and closer to what the final look of the film would be. Coloring characters. This is our one of our cleanup artists, and you can slightly see, it's a little fuzzy, but you can see the detail that she goes into, how to design the character, how to draw the characters, so that everybody could follow her. On top of the animator's drawings, it's going to be her responsibility to clean up all those rough drawings so it looks nice. We scan them in the computer and then color them. So it's quite an involved process. You really need to love to draw. So there's another stage of it. And every aspect of the film has to be done. So this is background painting. This also, the coloring takes place in the computer. If you have shadows or smoke or anything like that, there's an effects animator and an effects cleanup artist that has to take care of that. So everybody has all these little tiny steps that you have to basically assemble, just like the film before showed. All of them kind of come together to make the finished product. And then you have to edit it, put it in the computer and edit it with sound and music, and finally, finish out the final piece of what it's going to look like. And there's lots of late nights. I can promise you this was probably like 4 o'clock in the morning. And I took a picture of my friends working on it while I was working with them, because I was the director on that film, and my friend Dominic was the director on the other director, because we worked together, sort of split responsibilities of the film, and that was our editor, Kevin. And I wish I had a video. I actually have a video where I'm videotaping them, but they're like so angry that they're up so late that when they see me videotaping, Dom kind of stares at me and just looks away, so does Kevin, and they're not smiling, so it's kind of funny. But that's what we do. It's actually worth it. We work some late nights sometimes, but we actually have a lot of fun doing it. So, and then what we're going to see now is the actual finished piece, the film that we finished. It took us 3 months, about 3.5 months to finish. I forget how many people worked on it. I'd say about 20 people worked on it. And we actually won an award from Nickelodeon, the audience award. The audience members voted for it, that they liked it the best. And we came this close to actually getting it on TV, and sold it to a couple markets, and they were just waiting for us to finish the episodes. But people got cold feet, and on top of that, some of the networks started backing out when the animated film Barnyard came out, because they thought it looked too similar to that. They had barn animals and things like that. So, but it was still a lot of fun to work on, and something that I learned from and I use to teach other people. So, hope you enjoy.
This will make the perfect lay and no one knows I'm here! Filthy shame! Now all I need is an army, but how? You're just holding the floor of my cheek!
I'm just trying to make a paper airplane. How's it go again? Hey.
Please make my home place and photo center.
Ooh. Like this?
Photo center!
This?
Photo center!
Like this?
Hey, I just cleaned this yard. Fish sticks, you better calm yourself down.
This is what we've been training for.
The tuna forecast?
No, a call to action.
And what exactly is your plan?
We'll decide when we get there.
We're there.
It's back to the cuckoo corral for you. I think not, my fish-lipped friend. You haven't beat me yet, Ham-Hop. Any last requests? Just one. Hold to center!
Physics, look, I did it.
I'll get you, Father! Vision Beak.
Think that was some paper plane.
Oh, so does this mean you can teach me how to fold a paper boat? A paper tractor? A paper plane? A paper...
So that was Farm Force, so it was a lot of fun to work on. It would have been cool to see on TV, but it didn't work out that way. But just some background on the characters as well too. So you can see Fish Sticks, of course, was the whole sort of karate thing, martial arts. Layla, this was before Foster's show where the character Coco lays the eggs, and so we had her superpower basically was she laid eggs, and the different object that they would need would just magically show up out of the egg. So whatever she needed at the time, she would lay it. And then Big, of course, was super strong, and he could fly, but he could only fly about 2 inches off the ground. He couldn't go any higher than that. So we had a lot of fun working on it, and it would have been a really cool show, but it didn't work out that way. But like I said, I learned a lot of stuff from it. So at the school, Elite Animation Academy, we like to teach a lot of these fundamentals of animation, stuff that I learned at Disney and over the years. So there's a lot of information that you would be privy to. You came to the school on just how to draw, having volume in your drawings, different techniques, and talking about sort of the history of animation too, where you have the cave paintings where cavemen would put all these multiple images of the legs, and a lot of people have theories that they were trying to somehow show movement, because of course they didn't have video cameras, they didn't have cameras to take pictures, so they were trying to express it in some way. And there's even some scientists now that are studying where they've done some little animations with these, and you can actually see them moving a little bit when they put them into a computer. But they have a theory that they used to take torches and sort of play around with the light, and when you played around with the light, that the images would actually look like they're moving and sort of be magical to them. So since the beginning of time, man's been trying, and woman, has been trying to move things. So here, Egyptian hieroglyphics, where you can see every little position of these two characters wrestling. And there's also places in Egypt where when the chariots would go through the streets, the pillars would have different drawings, and each one would have a different stage of the drawing. So as the chariot went by, and if you were in it and looked, it actually looked like the character was moving as you passed each pillar. So they had an idea of how this worked a little bit. There's also a vase that was in Iraq somewhere, thousands of years old, that actually, if you spun it, it has a little sheep on it or a goat that jumps up and eats something. So kind of cool too. So you'll see it throughout history. And then of course, one of the first things before film came around, what they used to do is they had this thing called a magic lantern, which basically just had a candle, or when they had electricity, would shine light through it. and they had these images that they would create in glass, in multiple layers of glass, which let them be able to manipulate and move it. So this is actually, if you look it up on YouTube, you can find it, because a lot of people collect these, and the guy was showing everybody what it looked like, but this is very much what it would look like, because it was an original slide, and it had little articulating pieces so the mouth would move and the eyes would move, and people would kind of freak out when they saw this, because until then they didn't have film, so they didn't know that you could do this, or have film so that you could see movement. So this is one of the first sort of things, like people were always trying to have some sort of movement to tell stories or show people ideas that they had in their head. Of course, when film came about, you had lots of experimentation. You had one guy actually take all this furniture and move it inside and outside of a house, one frame at a time, so it looked like it's moving. You had this guy who was doing chalk drawings, so he would draw and erase, and this is the top technology at the time. We have Pixar today, but this is what they did. And then eventually, the guys who really started pushing the medium of animation was all the people at Disney, and Disney had all these great ideas, and he had plenty of people that were very talented to fill those other things. So all this stuff is what I'm going to be drawing on, and a lot of the teachers are going to be drawing on when we teach classes at the school. Not just for animation, but lots of other classes that we do. Specifically for traditional animation, some of the assignments that we work on are the pendulum swing, where you just have to swing an object. So if any of you have been to the fair at the Holy Family during October, the Halloween time, they have the fair. It goes on for like 4 days, and they have one of those giant pirate ships that swing back and forth. When it gets to that highest point, it kind of stops there for a second. And these are kind of things that we're trying to teach the kids to think about how something moves in real life. And again, if you're going to be an animator one day, it's going to be things that are really going to help you out. On top of that, working on your drawing skills. So we do the pendulum swing. We also do bouncing ball. We go over what squash and stretch is and how that works, how gravity works. And we have this really cool system that I'll show you in a second of how we shoot the animation. But these are just a sample of things that we'll do. Sometimes we do the sack, where you animate a sack walking around. And the cool thing about a sack, it's really simple to draw. But if you draw it in a certain way, you can make it actually feel like it's a real person. It has emotion and feelings and things like that. So we teach a little bit of that as well. Some different animations, some samples that you can look at here. So that's a little bit. But like I said too, we also have Robbie teaching Maya class, so it's 3D animation. We have Flash class. We have a great teacher teaching anime now, who actually worked for Marvel at one point, doing comics for Marvel. So we have a lot of great teachers that are teaching there, a lot of different things. We recently had some sculpting classes. We also did a stop motion class with little figures and clay. So we're sort of opening up a lot of different things that we're doing there. So there's a lot of great resources out there for art, but what we have is a little unique, a little different. It's really catering to the kind of things that I like and notice that a lot of other kids out there like, especially with you guys have computers today and so many different ways of doing things. I mean, there's kids and there's young adults who are making their own films and putting them up on YouTube, which is like really cool, because in the day we didn't have that kind of access. We didn't have the internet, we didn't have a computer, and we didn't really have a way to express the ideas we have. You guys do. I mean, you guys have the ability to do lots of things at home. So we're trying to teach all these fundamentals that will help you guys either just do what you love to do or pursue it as a career as well. So, can you turn on the lights, class? One thing I was going to talk about quickly is you guys have these little pads in front of you. Again, we weren't sure the age range or something. Last time we did this at the other library, we had a bunch of adults come through. But basically, these are just like treating it as a flip book, because I'm sure most of you guys have done sort of a flip book in your book at school or at home or something like that, where you've drawn something, you start flipping it and see it animate. It's a really easy way that you can do something on your own at home if you don't have some of the stuff that some of the other things I'm going to show you. So we're going to talk about how to do a bouncing ball in a little bit, and if you guys would like to do that, you could do it on this. We also brought some of these boards in and the paper. These are some of the first boards that we started using in the school. They're boards that I made. It's just a plexiglass tape and these little special peg bars. The reason why we use the peg bars. Hello.
Hi.
How are you?
Good.
See. What's your name?
Joseph.
Joseph, nice to meet you. The reason why we use these pegs act just like the binding of a book. So that if you start doing drawings, the drawings aren't going to move around. They're going to stay registered. They're going to stay firm where you want them to be so that it works. If it didn't, the animation would be all over the place. So what we use in animation are these peg bars. We also have, I don't know if you can see, these are all round. The ones that we use when I was at Disney or other traditional animators use, we use this disc, which is kind of interesting. I'm sure probably a lot of you haven't seen something like this. And these are kind of desks that we use. It's got a giant hole inside of it. You put this in there. The reason that is so you can spin it around, because I think when you draw at home, you probably realize sometimes you like to move your paper so you can get the right angle. So that's what we like to do with this, so we can spin it all the way around and it helps us draw our animation. And then the pegs are there, the paper, and we can flip the paper back and forth so we can see if our drawings are moving properly. But this one has one peg and slots, so that's just different animation paper. We use 3 pegs so that we can just get some regular 8.5 by 11 paper from the office supply store, punch it with 3 holes, and that's what we like to use for animation. We also have desks that are similar but much bigger that actually we used at Disney, and we've been able to bring them into the school. We have like 4 or 6 of them, I can't remember how many. So sometimes the students like using these, sometimes they like sitting at the desk and using those. It just depends on them when they do the animation class. But you're more than welcome, after I give a little presentation or the little tutorial on how to do the bouncing ball. If you don't want to use this, I think we have enough of this. You guys are interested in using this, and we could actually shoot it on the computer, which what the computer is basically, and later on I'd like to invite some of you to come up and play around with it. You can turn on the camera and we can do some experiments where you actually just put an object and take a shot of it one at a time and move it around just like they do stop motion. If you guys have seen Wallace and Gromit and 3D movies, Pirates and things like that, that's kind of how they work. It's the same principle, except they're using actual objects to move around one frame at a time and then taking a picture of it. So, but if you want to, you can come out here and play with this, or if you do your animation on here, you can shoot it on here and see what it looks like. But let me talk about the bouncing ball, if you guys want to do it. Bouncing ball is really one of the first animation exercises that they've been teaching since the beginning of time. All the guys, the old guys who are long gone by now, did the same thing. It teaches a lot about movement, how objects move, squash and stretch, gravity, volume, weight, all of those things. And eventually the guys, once they started getting past doing a bouncing ball, a lot of them would have like a bouncing egg and it would jump and crack and a little bird would fly. They started getting more and more creative how they did it. But it's an exercise that everybody does. If you go to an animation school, they're going to teach you the bouncing ball. I mean, like a real sophisticated, like a college. When I was at Disney, it was the first thing they taught me, a bouncing ball. So everybody learns it. So it's what we teach in the school. So if you end up going to a college for animation or anything like that, you're going to be one up on everybody else. But what I usually like to have the students do is we talk about something that's called POA, or path of action, of what something follows, an object that follows. So that the ball just bounces and comes like this and then comes to a stop. And this path of action, on anything in animation, more than likely, like 99.9% of the time, it's going to be moving organically or an arc like this. So almost everything moves that way. So if you look like a baseball pitcher and he's got the ball in his hand and he goes to throw it, if we slowed it down and we looked at the point right here at his wrist and followed it in a line, you'd see that it moves in an arc. Most things don't move just straight on. Like maybe a robot moves like that, or if someone's shooting an arrow or a bug buzzing around, but not too many things move in a straight line, they move in an arc. So we'd like to try to get into everybody's head that that's how something moves. So that's the first thing. The next thing that you want to think about is timing and spacing. So if a ball's coming in, you actually can start making little tick marks on here to determine where the ball's going to be. Because you control everything when you're doing animation. So you can put anything wherever you want to. And the closer, so if these spaces are closer, something is going to move slower. If they're further apart, it's going to move faster. And as you start doing more and more animation and learning that, you're going to figure out how to sort of manipulate something. So it's going to come in slower because at this arc, because eventually it originally came bouncing this way, and gravity's going to start working on it. So when something bounces and starts going up, gravity starts pulling it, so it's going to start slowing down. If it's going to start slowing down, the drawing's going to be spaced closer. When it's coming down, it's going to speed up because gravity's pulling it down, so they're going to be further apart. Down here will be your squash. Then it comes back up again. Kind of slows down in here, goes a little faster. And over here it starts getting a little more complicated because it's getting closer together, and eventually the ball comes to an end here. So you want to think about squash. When it hits, when it comes up this way, it may be elongated a little bit, kind of like an oval. Move back into its regular shape of a ball here and here. And these tick marks you can plan out where your balls are going to be, and the tick mark is actually going to be the middle of the ball. And if you want to do it in the little flip book, it'll be a little harder to sort of plan this out, but on your first page you can and kind of reference it back to it if you want to. If you work on these things, it's going to be a little easier to do. But you want to remember that you're going to be flipping back and forth from one drawing to another. So if you have any questions about this, if you want to do it in your flip book, just go ahead. If you want to use one of these boards, just let us know when we have paper here and you got your pencils already. Or if you want to come up and experiment with this computer and move something around and see how that program works, you're welcome to do that as well. If you have any questions, you can ask me any questions. You can ask class questions. Ms. Valeska, Robbie,
Do you guys believe
Mr. West.
You want to use the flip book?